everybody. TechnoCLIL for Review 2017. This webinar is part of this initiative. Today we are starting week 2. We have the privilege to have today one of the best, the world famous expert in CLIL, Professor Oliver Meyer, and so we are so grateful to him for accepting presenting TechnoCLIL, and also double thankful because he accepted to moderate the Experts Voice Forum in week 3. So we'll find Oliver again next week, starting from the 23rd of January. He's going to moderate the forum in week 3. So thanks again, double thank you, Oliver. So just a few words to introduce Oliver, even if his biodata just so long, as I said, is world famous. So just to sum up, he's professor for English Didactics at the Student University Mainz. He is also qualified teacher of geography and EFL with several years of career teaching experience. From 2008 to 2013, he worked as a pre- and in-service teacher trainer at the Catholic University. As a CLIL expert, he was responsible for in-service training of the 150 middle school teachers involved in a CLIL pilot program in that area. Oliver has also several CLIL and ESL textbooks and is currently working on a conceptual framework for the next generation of digital textbooks. He's a member of the CLIL Cascade Network and has been invited to teach CLIL courses in many European countries, and is currently coordinating CLIL 2.0 literacy through content and language integrated learning, effective learning across subjects and languages, a project for the European Center for Modern Languages, EML in Graz. So it's just a few words about Oliver, because as I said, Oliver is just a star, and so a double thank you, and we are really happy to have you here in TechnoCLIL. Thank you, Oliver. The floor is yours.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm not sure I'm familiar with the settings, so I'll just try and activate my presentation. If there are any glitches, this is my very first webinar, so I'm pretty nervous, everybody. And I hope everything works all right. So I am really excited because I've got lots of new stuff that I would like to share. Please let me know, type in your comments if you can hear me all right, because I don't know. So the question today is obviously, how can we use digital media to better promote CLIL? How can we use digital media to promote deeper learning? That is the key question. And I prepared a short presentation, which I will give to Letitia right after the presentation is over. If you find this useful, please use it. Please make sure to follow us on ResearchGate on Twitter and check out our website, our ECML website, because we created lots of materials for teachers to show how to do the things that we talk about all the time. So as you know, in a couple of years ago, we started producing a new model. Actually, we were looking to find answers to the question of why a number of research actually showed that close students weren't doing very well, actually, or CLIL was not as successful as people always claimed it was. That was our whole concern. There's research which compares CLIL performance and performance of students who do subject like geography through English, and those who do it in their native tongue. And what we could actually see is that both groups didn't do very well. And the only reason we could think of when we look at this is that if people cannot explain what they really understood about geography or any other subject, then the only answer that we can give is that these people probably haven't understood it fully. So we were trying to come up with answers, and the best concept or the most convincing ideas that we found in the idea of deeper learning. And if you look at the next slide, deeper learning can actually be defined as the ability to take what you learn in one context and apply it to something else. So that is crucial to school learning, and what we actually want in our students is that ability. That ability to transfer learning, to be able to create, to solve problems that they have not necessarily been prepared for in class, because that is what life is all about. So the big question is, how is that useful for CLIL? And how is that even important for CLIL? Well, the report is pretty clear. The report says that there are no such things as general problem-solving mechanisms, or if they exist, they are so slow that people hardly use them. So if we really want to teach deeper learning and activate those processes, then the report is very clear that we have to do that within subjects. That is why CLIL is so important. The reason why we do CLIL then gets a new answer, because it prepares students to learn deeply about subjects and communicate about that subjects in two languages. That is actually what CLIL literacy is all about. It is about the ability to communicate understanding, deep understanding in more than one language. It's actually quite simple once you get the hang of it. So how is this important? And how is this related to deeper learning? So the first thing that I'd like to point out briefly in the first part is, what exactly is deeper learning? How is it related to CLIL? And only once we understand the key mechanisms that guide deeper learning can we understand how we can use that and promote these abilities at school. Next, once we get the hang of this, we can tackle the question as to how we can apply digital media to promote deeper learning. So the first key idea that we found is that deeper learning rests on two processes, and I would like to introduce both of them very briefly. So the first process is internalization of conceptual knowledge. In order to truly understand something, and that is taken from Vygotsky and a reinterpretation of Vygotsky's work by James Lantoff. And James Lantoff's book is really fantastic because it gives us clear answers as to how we can promote deeper learning at school. So that there's three phases that we need to go through, and it is very important that students do lots of hands-on activities in order to start wrapping their minds around certain ideas and new concepts. But if we don't follow up with explanations, and if we don't follow up with giving students the ability to language their understanding, then they will not reach the mental stage where all that knowledge is internalized and they can apply it to new situations. Yes, there's a bibliography at the end, which, because I just saw your comments, I will only refer to 3 of our publications, but inside those publications, and some of them are already available on the net, you'll find all the references. Next questions that I just saw, is this linked to Bloom taxonomy? In a way it is, and in a way it isn't. It is linked to Bloom taxonomy as that the knowledge aspects that we talk about, such as conceptual knowledge, factual knowledge, procedural and strategic knowledge, that is all taken from Bloom. But what we like to improve is the idea that you don't have to climb different stages in order to understand something. But I'll get back to that later. And if you still have questions, please don't hesitate and ask. So that's the first key idea, conceptual understanding. And the studies that Lantoff is quoting, they showed very clearly that if students only got hands-on activities, they could not summarize their own understanding. So if you only do hands-on activities, it will not necessarily promote deeper learning. Same with the students who were only talked to by their teachers, so who only received the verbal phase. They could not really understand the content that was presented to them. So you need both ideas melted together. Yes, and the next idea. So we're talking internalization of conceptual knowledge. And the next key idea is automatization of relevant skills. This sounds like a really difficult concept, which in a way it is, because teaching languages and content can never be an easy issue. But I firmly believe that only once we understand the deeper mechanisms and processes can we truly understand to plan accordingly. So the most important idea is that, and that is a key concept in our model, that there's no direct route from rule-based system to a memory-based system. We can clearly dissect the brain and see those two memory systems, but the problem is there's no direct route from one aspect to the other aspect. So if we really want our students to automatize their speaking skills or their writing skills, where they can freely write about their own ideas, we need to be very aware that it takes both the dark blue activities as well as the light blue activities. So we both need real tasks, complex tasks, and we need practice activities. We probably need more of the light blue stuff than we need of the dark blue stuff, but we need both aspects, and that is key to training. So we need to teach them how to write better. We need to do all the language work. We need to work on certain skills, but we need to do that in context. That is key. So, moving on. And it's kind of awkward because I don't see any of you. Can't judge your reaction, so I hope everything is fine. Please write, signal whenever something is going wrong, okay? So, once we're clear about the idea of deeper learning and the two key processes that we need, the question becomes, how can we use all that and turn that into progressions? How can we start in primary, and how can we build on these skills until we reach the age of upper secondary or even university learning? The idea is that we somehow need to build a knowledge pathway into the subject where students make more progress, where they are able to understand things at a deeper level and express them in clear language to show that they've understood things. And the answer to that question is we found in concepts of scientific literacies. So the ability to transfer or talk about what you've understood. And when you look at the diagram, and I hope on your screen it's clearer than on mine, you can clearly see that the lowest level understanding is just the beginning. Yes, by the way, you can have all the slides. I will leave them with you. Feel free to use all the slides. And if you want to have more materials, just visit our website, pluraliteracies@ecml.at. You'll find tons of examples. You'll find presentations by all of our members, Do Coyle, Anna Halbach, and all the others, which will focus on different aspects of the model. So what you can see, understanding is just one aspect. But if we really want our students to be able to use their knowledge that they gain in class, we need to teach them how to talk about their understanding, how to share their understanding, because that is key to transfer. And we need to start small, so probably transfer happens in a very close situation before we can apply it across languages and subjects. So, moving on. How do you actually plan progress? And how can you make use of language to support that progress? That is the key question in CLIL. And the best answer we could come up with is, or can be found in a certain type of linguistic and something that we find in Australia of all places. So this is systemic functional linguistics. This is David Rose and all the others, which have heavily influenced our thinking. And the idea is actually pretty simple. These people have analyzed and taken apart lots and lots of textbooks, asking the same question: how is progress modeled in those textbooks? And they found a very surprising and I believe very exciting and cool answer. It is that all the different subjects just follow 4 different ways of making meaning. So in a typical subject, you will have activities to do the science, to actually create information, to do an experiment, or to just dig into the earth, what you do in geography. or to talk to sources, what you do in history. Next, you organize that information. That's the next step, by describing it, by labeling it, and so on and so forth. You try to make sense of what you find, and then you use that knowledge to argue. So there's just 4 different knowledge activity domains in all of school science, and the research is pretty clear. We can find that in almost every subject. So let me just forward a little bit so I can see what is actually going on. So we try to make use of this and build our model accordingly. As you can see, and that is what we found in David Rose and Martin, is that each of these knowledge domains, and that is probably key to a revised and deeper understanding of CLIL, clearly corresponds with a certain type or a text type or genre. So if I do certain things, if I make an experiment in school, then the equivalent language text type or genre is a lab report. There are different genres which refer to the categories of describing, explaining, and explaining or arguing things. So we tried to make use of this, and about 2 years ago, we developed a model which tries to incorporate all these things. So it, at this stage, consists of 2 different axes, or which we call continua, because we want students to move around on these continua freely, and we believe that they are rather cyclical in nature. So it's not that you have to do one or the other, but each of these individual ingredients are basically activated all the time. So it's a lot more dynamic than older models. So in this first continua, you will see which we call the elements of knowledge. I hope it's working. Oh yeah, so we call it the conceptualizing continuum because it's all about building knowledge. So we're talking facts, concepts, procedures, and strategies. And actually it's quite simple. So we need strategies and skills to turn facts into concepts. But all that is meaningless if our students cannot express their understanding. So deeper learning, according to our model, consists of the ability to make connections between these 2 continua. This is where deeper learning is located. So only if students can actually connect themselves, their thinking and the language, will they be able to truly understand a subject. And that way, we can conceptualize progress. So primary learners, for instance, they can engage in all the 4 activity domains of making meaning. They can describe and organize, they can explain, they can argue, but not at the same level of depth as secondary learners or university students. So we have to build on the idea of deepening understanding by pushing those arcs. So ideally, upper secondary students should be able to explain complicated things at a much deeper and more precise level than primary students. That is key to our model, and that is our pluralities model, which we created with tons of experts and teachers from all over, because we weren't happy with CLIL anymore, because we weren't sure what it actually still meant. It is never specified what the CLIL people of the first hour, what they actually mean by content, what they actually mean by language. Here it's much clearer. When we talk about conceptualizing, we can name all the 4 key ingredients. When we talk of communicating continuum, we can map all the ingredients and we can measure progress. So we can give CLIL a clear direction. That is why we set out on this journey, and we are very excited by this model. To make this even easier to understand, we built another analogy using Lego bricks. So based on this visual, we think that primary students, we because they are still, or their brains are still less developed than upper secondary students or kindergarten children. They have bigger bricks at their disposal, so they cannot think about things as detailed and as in-depth as advanced learners, but they can still produce fully fledged genres, even though they're not as sophisticated as they will be later on. But intermediate students have finer tools. They can understand things at a much better level, at a much finer grain level. So they should be able to come up with something that is doing justice to the idea that knowledge is getting deeper. Can you still see? Because I get this, there's nothing showing. It shows on my screen. So can you see? Okay, I take this thumbs up. Okay, so you can see, great. So this is the idea. When we start with young learners, we have to make sure that the patterns we give them, explanations, understandings of the world, are pretty big, not yet sophisticated and detailed. But as we move on, we need to move on to the deeper levels, making it more complicated, more complex, and giving them the tools at the same time to express their understanding. We are very excited to have support of world-class experts such as Christiane Dorten-Puffer, and talking to these people gave us the possibility to link both the Australian, the functional linguistic model, and the European version of approaching CLIL. So here is a very sophisticated table, and you may probably want to look at this and give it another hour or so, where we can show that the typical ways of making meaning, the typical discourse function that Christiane lists, and the great thing is that there are only 7 or 8 of them, they clearly match the Australian model. So if we focus on those 7 or 8 discourse functions, from reporting to describing to classifying and so on, then we basically cover all the ways of generating knowledge. Now, the really exciting thing, which we're incredibly proud of, is that our model is now able to show how you can take an explanation and break it apart, take it apart, and turn it into something really easy, and build on that explanation so that it gets deeper and more sophisticated. If you are interested in how to do that in your classrooms, please check out the materials that we created for the EasyMO website. You will find it all for different discourse functions, for defining, for explaining, for arguing, and for different subjects. So all that just to give you an idea on what we actually mean by deeper learning. And still, we weren't very satisfied, and that is because we realized that if you go into a classroom, it's not all about thinking and cognition. It's most of all about human beings, about students, and if we fail to motivate them, reach them, or get them engaged, learning won't be possible. There's amazing new research that clearly shows that engagement is a very sophisticated model, and that it consists of 4 components, but the most important ones are probably cognitive engagement and emotional engagement. And what that research tells us is that these 2 components, the cognitive ones and the emotional ones, they're related. So if students don't feel safe, if they don't feel supported, if they don't feel appreciated at school, it will affect their cognitive engagement. And if cognitive engagement is low, then we can expect poor learning, and we can expect bad performance, actually. So we somehow need to build that into our model. If we fail to engage our students, deeper learning will never take place. So we sat together with experts, read the research, and we realized that our model just needs to become bigger, and we need to build in those components. So what I can present to you for the very first time, and you are the very first to see this one, other than Doe and the others who developed this, is a model that now consists of 4 continua. So when you look at this diagram, which I think is very neat, it's not yet three-dimensional. This is what we try to do later this year, but it clearly shows that we still have the conceptualizing continuum in green and the language communicating continuum in blue, and there need to be connections between these two. But at the same time, on the left and on the right, you see that we added different ingredients. And on the left-hand side, you can see the personal growth continuum, as we call it, which is all about students and their different needs and the things we need to do to get them engaged. So the model that we found is one that takes both account aspects like motivation, but also self-regulation. And the psychologists that we talk to and the research that we unearthed is very clear. So student self-efficacy, so their sense of how well they're doing, will affect engagement. And it will engage the way they engage with their emotions, their cognitions, how they act, but it will also affect how they engage with others. And if engagement is high, we can expect better performance than if engagement is low. And of course, students need to reflect on this. And then the circle starts anew. So you have to think of this as a true cyclical continuum. So that is the student side. And at the same time, we realize that students also need mentors, which could both be their teachers or other students or experts. So we added a complementary mentoring or a teaching continuum, which consists of several components, both of designing and evaluating classrooms. We use the word design instead of planning because it makes it obvious that much more thinking and finer-grained ideas go into that idea than if we use the word planning. So we need to plan the lessons, to design the lessons for deeper learning, to scaffold everything we do, provide student feedback, and assess accordingly. And ideally, all that will go back and affect future planning. And of course, we need to plan in such a way that all those 4 continua are represented. So what we now have is actually a model that we can apply to almost any kind of learning. This is no longer about CLIL or non-CLIL. This is not about cognition or emotion. This is not about psychology versus pedagogy. This is, I believe, a truly integrated model. And it shows us what integration, as in CLIL, could actually mean. So it is about integrating, communicating, conceptualizing the student perspective and the teaching perspective. So this is what we have. And thanks for accepting the term design. Doe was really excited about, Doe Coyle was really excited about designing when we met last week. We also like it much better than planning. Thanks so much. That is really, really useful. And it's good to see that somebody is reacting to what I say. I might as well talk to, I don't know, the wall. So all this is basically the model. The problem that we face in classrooms is this. We don't teach one student, but we teach many of them. And so we somehow have to plan our lessons, to design lessons that help students of individual dispositions and needs and abilities to learn. So we have to build learning environments. And it becomes obvious, at least we believe it becomes obvious, that this is where we need digital media. If we really want to design deeper learning scenarios or ecologies for many students, then we need to implement digital media. But we need to design them with a certain goal. I'm not sure, or probably all of you are familiar with the SAMR model. I'll just spell it out. here in the comment section. So this is the model that is being quoted all over the net, the internet. There's just something wrong with that model. Is first, it's not based on research, and the second idea is that it doesn't have a content connection. So nobody knows exactly what it is that we should improve using digital media. So when we use digital media, then basically we now have our overarching goals, because we can go back to the model I just showed you and to the idea of deeper learning. So the key reason why we use digital media in the classroom or in the third classroom is because it's about promoting deeper learning for all students, for everybody in the classroom. And for that, we need to actually go away from the way we planned lessons in the past and think bigger picture and think in more radical terms. So what we have to do is, since we have the technologies, to both fuse what is going on at school and what students are doing at home. Because if we really want to keep students engaged and motivated, we need to make use of their desire to learn, of their desire to work autonomously at home, anywhere in the world. So we need to find a model or an idea or a new way of looking and learning. That's why Doe is talking a lot about learning ecologies in the last couple of months, because that is what we have to do. Move away from traditional classroom teaching to thinking in terms of learning ecologies that actually combine both the formal and the informal. And the term that we created is actually something that I took from gardening, where people talk about landscaping, so designing landscape, and we wanted to apply the very same to the idea of learning. That's why we talk of learnscaping. And we have just handed in an article which sums up all these ideas and which will hopefully be published very soon. Please, if you're interested in this, follow us on ResearchGate, because you will be the first to know about new publications. So we have to be very clear about the added value when we talk about using digital media. So it should be about enabling, promoting deeper learning by, for instance, personalizing the input, making it more immersive, individualizing learning by giving different kind of scaffolding, by providing differentiated tasks, by doing all those things that I tried to sum up on this one slide that you can see right before you. So moving on, just need to okay, how do we do this? We need to be aware first that deeper learning is what it's all about, that we somehow need to connect all the students, all the shareholders, and that we have to connect formal as well as informal learning. A nice new idea for this paradigm change that we obviously need in our classrooms is from a blogger that I admire a lot. Her name is Jackie Gerstein. I'm sure those who are on Twitter and follow social media must have heard of her. And she created this idea of Education 3.0 to indicate the shift, the huge transformational shift that needs to happen if we really want to grant our students, our learners, access to everything that the internet has to offer, and to make them ready for the future, which will be very different from the lives we're living now. So it will be a place where the borders between the formal and the informal will probably disappear, and that will have huge implication for teaching. So how do we do this? How do we actually really do what I'm talking about? It's not just words. I'm not sure if you know, but I am spending most of my days preparing students to become teachers. And we have master classes where our students produce iPad materials. So we constantly have to think of how to implement new ideas and make them accessible in a learning situation. So if we're serious about applying digital media and digital tools, we really have to take our teaching apart, look at the individual components, and see how we can add value to each of these individual components. So here I just tried to give a few of these ideas to the typical CLIL classroom, where we have the dimensions input, interaction, output, and reflection, and also, most important ingredients, tasks, and the scaffolding and feedback, but also the exercises we need to promote deeper learning. So we try to find ways of how to make input more engaging so that more students will commit into the learning, will buy into the lessons, how we can make interaction richer by, for instance, making it possible to interact with each other beyond the classroom, even beyond countries or individual communities. How can we individualize output? How can we help students? How can we help students produce better output by using the tools that are available? How can we use different mechanisms to help them reflect on their learning? How can we provide feedback, and ideally in such a way that our life as teacher will become easier and not so much harder, because there's just so many things that you can do in a full workday. In order to give more detailed answers or suggestion to these individual ideas, and it's not possible to do that in just one seminar. I just found a few examples that I wanted to share. So here's a table taken from our latest publication. Okay, I'm not sure. I hope I showed you all these slides, and I didn't just show them to myself, because I'm running a different PowerPoint to see about the next slide. So these are the individual components that I was actually talking about. And here's the table that I showed you. These are the individual component parts of a learning environment, of a LearnScape, and individual as aspects that you can use along with apps that exist at the moment. I'm sure we will see new ones a couple of months from now to actually improve the experience of each of these individual component periods. These are amazing apps. Some of them are truly mind-boggling. If you, for instance, in the second column, if you haven't checked out Newsella, then please do so. It is an amazing platform that, and by the way, I'm not getting any money from these people, that offers individualized reading experience for students. So you have text, and you can make them more difficult or easier and have them in 7 different levels. And there are numbers of these great apps that you can use, and I'll try to just give you an overview of how to use them to design the LearnScape that we're talking about, and at the same time not being, offered a number of apps that is so vast and huge that you simply don't know where to start. So here are some of the apps, but since I still feel this is not concrete enough, I wanted to focus on very specific application that you can start using in your CLIL classrooms right away, starting tomorrow morning. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this activity, but it is something that is called collaborative concept mapping. It is an amazing activity, and the app you can use, I have them in the table that I showed you just a minute ago. You can use CMap tools on iPads or on any platforms. It exists for Android. You can use it on Windows PCs to help your students express their knowledge. Now, the great thing, and it's very hard for me to talk about this without actually touching the screen, but I hope you see that the best thing about this tool, which makes it ideally suited for deeper learning or as a preparation for writing activities, is that the connection between the individual words, the labels, they have to be labels. So as you can see here, when you see concept maps can be used in many ways, can be defined as, can be explained as, that makes it possible for students to actually share their understanding of things. So if you teach complicated content in whatever subject you teach, don't ask them to simply just draw mind maps where they only have individual items, but move on to concept maps where they actually have to connect these individual knowledge items. That will force them to express their understanding, and if they do that in pairs, it will provide extremely valuable information and opportunities to share knowledge, to get talking. It is also, I believe, a great way of ordering and making sense of your knowledge, and it could be an ideal platform to move on and start collecting your ideas and then put them into proper writing. That is why I wanted to focus on the activity. I think it's wonderful. If you follow the link on the very same page on that CMap site, you can access all the links. That image that I used, the concept map image, is fully interactive. So if you want to know more about mind mapping, cognitive mapping, you can just click on that. Just follow the link on that specific website. And now, since I'm all alone in my office back home here, I don't really know how you're doing, how many people are actually out there. So I hope this was useful to you. I hope that you have a great evening, that you can use these ideas, and that maybe there was one or the other idea or app or specific concept that you found useful. I personally found this very exciting. If there are questions, make sure you ask me. I will spend time next week to answer questions. Please also make sure to check out our website that we created for the ECML. So the website is www.ecml.at. No, it's called Pluriliteracies at .ecml.at. That is the website where you find all the... Yes, if you want to, I can just open I can just send you the link. Wait a minute. So again, here is the website that I just copied from the web. Check it out. We spent years working on this. Also on the last slide, we would be very happy to rethink with you the idea of education, and we need to really think in terms of slow but deep, which is so much better than fast and superficial. I like this idea so much of slow education that I show it to everybody. Here are the references that I was talking about in the beginning. So the first article has been published for quite some time now. These other articles have already been handed in. They will be published very soon. If you follow us on ResearchGate, I will try and upload a pre-published version any day now. So just follow us on ResearchGate. You would support our professional careers, and you would enable us to just stay in touch with you. So any questions, just let me know. I'll let Leticia know, and I can answer them, and I'll post them on the chats next week. So that's basically.
Thank you, Oliver. Your webinar has been wonderful, really, really inspiring and great. And thank you also for the preview you gave us, your new model and all the hard work you've been working in this, you've been doing this years. You shared with us. So thank you very much. It's been a privilege for us to have you here. And double privilege to have you in the forum next week, in week 3. So you can continue talking, because I read some comments and from the participants writing that it's closing and they don't want you to to finish. So you'll find Oliver in the forum in week 3. So thanks again, Oliver.
It's been
wonderful.
Really Thank
wonderful.
you so much, and giving me the opportunity to do that. Goodbye. Have a nice evening. So I just check out now. Nikita, is that it? I just log out now. I close the website. Okay. So good evening. See you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.